John Gruden is the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, they moved the Raiders. Remember when they were the Los Angeles Raiders? They're now in Las Vegas, and he is their coach. He had been with the Washington Redskins for a number of years and then moved to ESPN. He was a color commentator. There was strong demand to get him back to the NFL, and he went back to coach the Raiders. Well, he coached until yesterday. He resigned before being fired. Now, let's set the stage here. While he was at ESPN, he sent a number of emails to friends within the NFL, many of them to their NFL team email accounts, not their personal accounts, and to the extent to their personal accounts, subpoenable or examinable accounts. Why? Well, he used to be with the Washington Redskins. There is an investigation ongoing into the culture, workplace culture of the Washington Redskins, and that's where Gruden's emails were uncovered. The email that was most egregious, the one that got the New York Times on him, it was leaked to the New York Times, and tangent, it was leaked to the New York Times. This was clearly a hit job on Gruden. Someone wanted to take him out. I'm assuming Goodell or someone, given what the disparaging emails about Goodell from John Gruden. They wanted to take him out. They wanted to have him out of the NFL. Now, let's step back. So the most egregious email, the one that got the New York Times really on this, was one from 2011, while Gruden was with the Washington Redskins, about the executive director of the NFL Players Association saying he had big lips. The guy's black. And so that was the racially insensitive one. Over the years, he left. He went to ESPN. He continued sending emails complaining about the NFL focusing on recruiting quote-unquote queers. He used the F word to describe Roger Goodell. He was very critical of their concussion policy and changes they made. They were emails that people, frankly, will say in private to friends in blunt, crass, vulgar terms. We don't have to justify or defend what he said. He also had comments about Joe Biden that were actually kind of funny that he called Joe Biden the P word. But let's just put this in perspective. John Gruden's emails came at a time he was not even within the NFL, mostly. To the extent that the ones that wanted him fired were in the NFL, they were from a decade ago. The most recent email was from early 2018, before he was even brought back into the NFL, still at ESPN. He blasted Roger Goodell. He wasn't an NFL employee at the time. We're going to provoke backlashes in this country when people realize they can't be frank with their friends in ways they want to be. You can be offended by what John Gruden said, but you were perfectly fine 48 hours ago with John Gruden's existence. And those emails that offend you are emails from a half decade ago, mostly. I mean, we're talking about the most egregious, blunt, frank emails from Gruden came 2011 to 2015, 16. There were a few in 2017 and 18, but mostly 2011 up to 2015, 16. We're not talking about recent emails. They didn't affect his performance or his relationship with his players. Maybe they will now. Maybe that's an argument. But too soon to tell, he quit before being fired. There's got to be some level of moral statute of limitations on these things to continue to punish people. And again, the NFL, the New York Times' primary focus was on a 2011 email where he referred to a black man as having big lips. When I first heard the sensationalism of it, I thought, I must have used the N-word. Nope, didn't use the N-word. Just referred to the size of the person's lips. You can say it's not good, okay, but it's 2011. It's a decade ago. And the New York Times targeted him, went after him, pursued him for a clear agenda, clearly someone wanting to take him out. You can speculate as to who, but it's very obvious. Here's the point. What was this all an investigation of? The Washington Redskins, now the Washington football team. And the fall guy is a man who hasn't worked there for years, left the NFL and came back and is with a different team, he's the fall guy? That doesn't make any sense. Unless you realize that part of this is a distraction from what else must be in the report. Another is that he was clearly targeted for the things he said, probably by Roger Goodell, as payback for what he said. But also, most importantly, you had no knowledge of what he said until the emails were leaked. You were perfectly fine with him. Everyone was fine with him, unless you just didn't like the Raiders. And the emails that have everyone so aggrieved about him are from years ago. They're not current. They're not even in the last 2 years. He should still have his job. He should not have resigned. This is continuing the dangerous precedent, very much like Kevin Hart's cancellation from hosting the Oscars because of a decade-old comment that made people mad. You start canceling people for this stuff. You start nursing and fostering more grievances among people, an undercurrent in society that builds into something silent but growing that ultimately results in a backlash. If you're not willing to offer grace, you're about to see a very graceless society push back very hard on this stuff. John Gruden should still have his job. What he said, there's no reason to defend it. But what you should be able to defend is someone being able to keep their job because their work performance hasn't been impacted, and what they said was years ago. Every single person has said something they regret, often to their friends in emails that they expected to be private. Yes, the emails are not private. Yes, they were exposed. But you got to look at this and think, you're firing a man because you got offended by something he said a decade ago in a private email to a friend? That's absurd. We live in absurd times.